Wondering about the worst umpire calls in the MLB? Well, we've got a list ready that will leave you aghast and astounded. Those umpires have ruined more games than you think. From Larry Vanover to Angel Hernandez, you would wonder what these umpires were thinking before making those calls. But are you ready to digest all that drama? However, before that, do like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stuff. Larry Vanover's double wrong decision. Starting with the worst umpires call this season, let's jump to the time when Larry Vanover made the worst decision of his lifetime. And not once, not twice, and the third time he was about to do the same, John Sardak had the best reaction to it. Of course, anyone can jump in to defend when we are talking about Elly De La Cruz. What happened was that Elly De La Cruz was ready and the air was high with emotions. The Cincinnati Reds were all equipped against the St. Louis Cardinals, and what could be more exciting than De La Cruz, known for his electric play and jaw-dropping speed, ready to spark yet another exciting play? But what happened next ruined everyone's moods. Vanover ruled De La Cruz out on what looked like a clear play in favor of the Reds. It was one of those moments where you could hear the collective groan of an entire fan base. It was the call, one that left both players and fans scratching their heads in confusion and fury. But fans weren't having it, because when the new spectacular star, Elly De La Cruz, comes on the field, it hurts to see his performance limited without any reason. And the biggest fury of all was that the umpire called twice, and then on the third call, even Reds announcer John Sardak had enough. You could clearly hear him yell in indignation, "Get out of here, come on, man!" Reds fans were buzzing after this questionable call as the game's momentum was hanging in the balance. Tweets and posts of fury went up on social media. One said, 34-year veteran umpire Larry Vanover called an atrocious game. He missed 26 calls for a correct call rate of only 83.2%, the third worst rate of the season. After he rang up Elly De La Cruz on 2 pitches well outside the zone, he ejected manager David Bell for complaining. No one was in favor of that guy. However, besides the frustration of the missed calls, the umpire stuck to his point. Good for him, Elly De La Cruz was able to steal 2 more bases in the game, and Cincinnati won the game with 3-0. Injustice with Armando Galarraga. However, what happened in 2010 was far more disturbing to watch. The surging excitement and emotions slumped down with a thundering crash when umpire Jim Joyce made a very wrong decision. And things were made worse by the fact that Armando Galarraga was just this close to making baseball history. He was 1 out away from pitching a perfect game, something only a handful of pitchers have ever accomplished. It was the 9th inning, 2 outs, and everyone at Comerica Park was on the edge of their seat. Then came the ground ball to first base. Galarraga covered the bag, caught the throw, and stepped on first before the runner, Jason Donald, got there. It would have been an easy out, game over, perfection. Except for one problem, umpire Jim Joyce called Donald safe. The stadium erupted in disbelief. The crowd couldn't believe their eyes, and Galarraga stood there composed, knowing what had just slipped through his fingers. Joyce, one of the game's most respected umpires, blew the call, costing Galarraga a spot in the record books. What made it even more memorable was Joyce's immediate reaction. After watching the replay, he tearfully admitted he got it wrong. It was a human error, and Galarraga, displaying extraordinary grace, accepted his apology. He said, "I can't even explain the feeling because there are no words. It's almost worse than my dad's death. That's how bad I felt." And Galarraga, showing sportsmanship, commented that nobody's perfect. He easily forgave the umpire, who was literally crying. What great men! Ruining Sid Bream's game-winning slide. But what happened in the 1992 National League Championship Series was way more dramatic because a well-known slow runner, Sid Bream, turned over that crucial game, ruining the chances of Pirates. That crucial call that declared Sid Bream safe at the last moment was highly controversial and sent the Atlanta Braves to the World Series. What actually happened was that at the bottom of the 9th, the Braves were down by 1, 2 outs, and Bream was chugging around third base like his life depended on it. The ball was in left field, and Barry Bonds fired it home with his cannon of an arm. It would be close, but everyone watching felt like Bream could not beat the throw. The ball arrived just as Bream slid into home, and as the dust settled, umpire Randy Marsh made the call. Safe. The Braves won, and the Pirates were crushed, but not everyone was convinced that Bream actually beat the tag. To this day, fans argue about whether Bream was out. The replays, they're not super clear, and back then, there was no instant replay review to fix any errors. So, the call stood. But Pirates fans? They'll tell you with absolute certainty that Marsh blew the call. For them, it's a wound that hasn't healed. That play ended the Pirates' shot at a World Series and kicked off a serious drought in the franchise's history. Meanwhile, Sid Bream became a hero in Atlanta, and that close call remains one of the most talked about plays in baseball lore, fueling endless debates over whether the Pirates were robbed of their chance at glory. 1985 World Series controversy. There's one more instance where Game 6 of the 1985 World Series witnessed a bad umpire call from Don Denkinger that affected the series between the Kansas City Royals and the St. Louis Cardinals so profoundly that Don Denkinger is still reminded of his mistake. And do you know what he says? "It's life, and it goes on," Denkinger said from his Arizona home. He continued, "I'm obviously reminded constantly that I made a mistake. You know what? I was an umpire for more than 30 years in the major leagues. I know I made a lot of mistakes. That one was just blown out of proportion. The time was critical, as the Cardinals were just 3 outs away from winning the championship. The Royals were down 1-0 in the bottom of the 9th when Jorge Orta hit a slow grounder to first. The Cardinals' first baseman, Jack Clark, fielded the ball and tossed it to pitcher Todd Worrell, who covered the bag. Orta was out by a mile, or so it seemed, but umpire Don Denkinger saw it differently and called Orta safe. Chaos erupted. Cardinals players and fans were livid, arguing furiously, but the call stood. It gave the Royals a spark of life. They capitalized on the opportunity, scored 2 runs in that inning, and won 2-1. That forced a Game 7 where the Royals cruised to an 11-0 victory, winning their first ever World Series. But all anyone could talk about was Denkinger's blown call. Cardinals fans were furious, believing they had been robbed of a title, while Royals fans couldn't believe their luck. Denkinger's call has since become one of the most debated in baseball history, and it still haunts Cardinals fans. The call stood without instant replay back then, and it's a reminder of how a single moment, one umpire's decision, can swing the entire outcome of a series. It wasn't the perfect call, but it was the moment that cemented the '85 World Series in baseball lore. Bad Times with Angel Hernandez. You very well know that Angel Hernandez is notorious for his bad calls and worst decisions in the MLB, and the people turned so much against him that they spoke openly about him. CC Samanthia once said, "I don't think Angel Hernandez should be umping playoff games. He's absolutely terrible." Even at his retirement, people recalled how poor he was at his job. You can recall when Angel Hernandez turned the home run into a ground rule double in 2016 at Citizens Bank Park during the regular season. But you know what's worse than making a bad decision? To botch the same one twice and call the television replays insufficient. But that is just a simple incident. What about when, in 2018, ALDS Game 3, Hernandez made his special hat trick by calling 3 wrong calls in a single game? One was when Yankees' Didi Gregorius was called safe but out. The second was when Torres was called out at first base but was safe. And third, when Gregorius was out at first base but was actually safe. And analyst Pedro Martinez had to say on the TBS postgame show, Major League Baseball needs to do something about Angel Hernandez. He's as bad as there is. And there is no argument here. Wrapping these up, you have come to know that umpires have also done a terrible job of bringing twists and turns in the game, leaving the spectators stunned and speechless. Which one was the worst incident that left you flabbergasted? Let us know in the comment section below. Waiting for your presence in the next video.